Hello and welcome to this ChinnyVision channel update with a few of your questions, a few updates of what's happening on the channel and details of how you can win an SD2 IEC for your C64, C16/+4 or VIC-20. Details of that later in this video. And the footage today is taken from Worthing earlier in the week during that mini heatwave, just to give you something nice to look at. Sometimes I actually record these things on the beach somewhere or somewhere interesting, but today, no, it's a little bit too cold. So just took some footage. You've sent your questions in, so let's crack on. Paul Wood asks, what prompted you setting up the channel? And has it changed your perceptions of a format? I just saw a need to put some real hardware footage out there, really. I was watching quite a bit on YouTube, listening to a few podcasts as well, and I just thought we're going to encourage people to use original hardware, because that's what I do. I had all the setup there, and I thought, well, if I could capture from original hardware, then why not? And it was just planned as a 3-month thing. I thought if 50 people viewed, that would be fantastic. And here we are. It's going to be 5 years this summer, which is astonishing, and I'm still interested in doing it, pootling along, minding my own business, enjoying it. So why not continue? And has it changed my perceptions of format? Mainly the BBC Micro, to be honest, because I've seen what the machine's actually capable of versus some of the utter dross that was released back in the day. Actually, the Beeb's actually a very capable system with some very good games on it. A lot of the new stuff is quite superb. You have to get over that colour palette thing slightly, because, let's face it, the colours are extremely garish and limited. But when you see some of the games, for example, Richard Broadhurst is doing, you see what the system's really capable of. And it's, my perceptions have been changed for that format. Larry Bundy Jr. asks, could I ask you, why do you think home computers never emulated console-style games until the end of the life cycle and chose to stick with arcade ports and movie licenses instead? I think it was the influence coming over from Japan of those kind of platformers that they influenced the 8-bit. You even saw games like Turbo the Tortoise on the Amstrad CPC, Fluff, again on the CPC Pluses, that were clearly inspired by games like Sonic. And we hadn't had those games really, so they influenced. And also platforms games were seen as old hat in the UK. People used to say, platform and ladder, that's an old-fashioned thing. And then the consoles came out and we kind of went back to that. Secondly, publishers like Ocean wanted to play safe. They knew if they bought a license like RoboCop or Total Recall or whatever, an arcade license like Chase HQ, they'd guarantee some sales regardless of the game. It automatically, you've got brand recognition there. So they wanted to play safe. And you did see some interesting games come up, games like Creatures and Creatures 2 on the C64, but it never really bothered the all formats top 40, did they? They sold well on their respective formats, but they didn't really make that jump. That said, games like Turrican 2 feel quite console-y, don't they? And they seem to kind of slightly predate the kind of surge of SNES and Mega Drive games coming over. So, yeah, I think really it's down to games publishers playing safe that happened. Rusty Russ asks, curious about the starting of ChinnyVision, what inspired you to start it? We kind of already did that one. And are there any games you would refuse to review? I think anything that's not suitable for a family audience, for a start. I mean, I know I've done Werewolves of London, but really we were playing that as kids, so I'm not particularly bothered about that. But things like Sam Fox and so on, not that you'd get very far in that game anyway, having captured some stuff for Digitizer and had to keep on snapshotting it and cheating to get the shots that Mr. Biffo needed for his own personal purposes. And yeah, I wouldn't do those games. And also, if someone sent something in for review that was as a homebrew game that was demonstrably awful, I wouldn't actually want to stick the knife in with them. I'd just leave it. To be honest, I'd send it back to them and say, I'm really sorry, I can't review this, because if something's utterly hopeless, it's completely different viewing a game like Death Kick on the CPC that's 35, 34 years old, and it's the worst thing ever. You can say what you like about that game. I'm sure the programmers, if they are watching, probably realise how utterly awful and what an awful software publisher put that out. But if you're doing that to a homebrew person today, I don't think you can do that. So I'll always be honest with the reviews, and I've never had to turn a game away. But if someone did send one in and it was demonstrably awful, I would just have to say, I'm sorry, I can't do this. Duncan Ward writes, I enjoy just about all the videos you do, but I admit I'm not very bothered about the modern emulator handhelds. I'll also admit to stopping most of the videos during the summing up. In terms of the modern emulator handhelds, well, it's basically just something different for me to do, because at the end of the day, I've got to stay interested in what I'm doing. Some people have told me they'd like ChinnyVision just to be games week after week after week after week, but that gets a pretty boring treadmill after a while, and the big system reviews take a lot of time. I'm working an Archimedes one at the moment that is taking forever. So sometimes you need something a little bit quicker to do, and something that piques your interest. And sometimes I see these things on eBay and go, it's a handheld Mega Drive. That sounds excellent. And it's probably not going to be, but it's interesting to finding out how rubbish it is. And likewise, the one I've got at the moment, you might have seen already or is going to come out soon, depending on when I put this video out, was a handheld console that played SNES games. And on the box, it looks perfect and costs a little bit more than the other ones. But, well, you'll find out. But that's really just to give me a little bit of variation, because otherwise it is just a treadmill of videos of doing the same thing over and over again. And as much as I care about what the viewers want, ultimately this isn't the commercial channel, so it doesn't necessarily need the clicks, and I have to stay interested in what I'm doing. So variation is keeping me interested in doing this stuff as well. Likewise, the magazine stuff, which I know a lot of people don't like, but again, I find that stuff fascinating, delving back into the magazine. So it's something I'm going to be doing again very shortly. In terms of not watching the summing up, well, the thing is, ChinnyVision isn't scripted or really prepared in the way many channels do. And quite often the summing up is me consolidating my own thoughts on what I've found out as I've played the games. If it was a channel where it was scripted and planned and everything was worked out in a much more structured way, I don't think I'd need that summing up, but I need something there. And perhaps I know it's too long fairly often, but it's just consolidating what I actually feel so that I can sum up in my feelings on the game. But if people want to tune out at whatever point they want to tune out, that's fine. Again, it's not a channel that's about minutes, whatever YouTube pushes lately. They seem to push minutes as opposed to views. It's not a channel about views, it's just about a band of people who like that kind of thing, watching for however long they want to watch. And if tuning out at any point works for you, some people only watch the sections for their own machines, apparently. That's fine by me. There's no pressure at all. The Buff One asks, any chance of a review of Shadow of the Beast? Funny story. I had the disc, I was about to do it, and that's when my Amiga 600 blew up a couple of years ago, just as I was loading Shadow of the Beast to start that. And then I keep meaning to find where I put that disc so I can start again, although I've got a USB adapter in that machine now, so perhaps we can do it. So it's going to happen, certainly, and there are interesting ports for that machine. Jonathan Holt asks, any plans on covering compilations like They Sold a Million? I'm not sure, because also those compilations, especially, for example, They Sold a Million, vary between formats. So, and they're 4 big games, so you're killing off 4 big games in one go. So I'm not really sure. And then you get things like 10 great games and so on. And some of the French compilations on the CPC have 30 games on them. And as much as I want to review 20 or 15 Tynesoft games on a 30-game compilation, it's killing off a lot of games in one go, and I don't think there's much value in it. Sorry. Steve Anderson of Your Sinclair asks, what was the second best Specky Mag, Crash or Sinclair User? Oh, well, I bought both. I bought all 3. Crash in the earlier years was a bit more reliable for reviews than Your Sinclair. In later years, Your Sinclair was more reliable than the other magazines. Sinclair User often had the best cover tapes, but you couldn't trust their reviews as far as you could throw them. I mean, 94% for Cisco Heat. Really? Count Duckula 2 getting in the 60s and none of the problems with the game being pointed out? And Sinclair User being printed on toilet paper and just being absolute garbage inside, but they had the tape. Crash probably edges out, although the Europress incarnation at the end was a rather shabby and horrible affair, like the zombie corpse of Crash still walking, and I think it was a small mercy it got put out of his misery, really. And before we do the competition to win the SD2 IEC, Matthew Scott asks, is there any kit you'd like to have on the channel you don't have either because it's hard to find or silly expensive? Well, for 2 years now, I've been trying to cover the Archimedes. I bought one with the profits from the 2017 calendar, and it was basically rot on the board, and it's unsalvageable from what I can see. I then borrowed one from the Future was 8-bit, which was working fine. Got near to finishing my review, just need to do some more capture, and the machine packed up. So we are sorting out with all of the channel funds for 3 months an Acorn Archimedes from a really friendly guy on Stardot who's going to sell that to the channel, and it's going to be all prepped up and ready to go. So that's the big one, getting that across, hopefully sorting that out very soon, probably by the time you see this, and that's going to make a big difference for coverage for the channel. In terms of other things, could have bought a PC Engine in the week, but no money left after the Archimedes. Perhaps some exotic MSXs from Japan. I think now it's pretty much time to start consolidating what the channel actually has, rather than trying to acquire more formats, because I think everything's pretty much well covered. There's a few obscure formats like Dragon and Auric and so on, but I think we're pretty well covered. And as I say, I've spent all the money on the Archimedes from the kindly Patreon supporters for 3 months, so we're not going to be buying anything again for quite a while. And now we move on to our competition, which is to win an SD2 IEC SD card reader for your C64 128 plus 4 VIC-20 or C16. It basically works like a 1541 disk drive, but it's an SD card, basically. And it's kindly provided by the Future was 8-bit, who helps the channel out a lot because ChinnyVision uses real hardware, as you know, and sometimes things go wrong. We need help because it's sometimes quite difficult here as well to just run the channel. We don't have any kind of, not an official sponsor or anything like that. There's a number of people, off the top of my head, people like Brendan Alford and so on, who are just really super helpful to ChinnyVision, because it's not easy with real hardware. People think it's just, you flick the machine on, it all works, and then you end up with games like Cisco Heat that don't work, or you end up with 3 PC games ready to capture and your laptop, a connector, power connector, packs up, and you spend 2.5 hours disassembling the machine and resoldering one tiny connection, because guess what? The power connector required everything else to be taken out, which is why you don't have PC coverage on Cisco Heat, Sweek and Gaza 2, because I had the floppy disks ready and then the machine packed up. So Rod's really helpful just with kind of advice and help and stuff keeping this channel going, and he sent this along to give away, which is very kind of him. And you can check out the Future was 8-bit website, tfw8b.com, for all the things they sell, various bits and pieces. But you can win this. All you've got to do is simply reply below or Twitter DM me or reply on Patreon if you support on there with you want to win this, and it's open to everyone. I've got to say that. So this competition is open to absolutely everyone, and the closing date is the 22nd of March, and I will do the draw at some point after that live on ChinnyVision 2, which there'll be a link below. So, and you can also win a ChinnyVision pen as well as a second place prize. And if you want to own a ChinnyVision pen, just go to ChinnyVision.com, click on the pen link, and you can have a wonderful metal but soft touch coated pen with laser engraved into the plastic ChinnyVision logo. So thanks for joining me, and Chubaruba is out on Thursday night about 7:30 as usual. Have a fantastic rest of the week, and thanks for all your questions, and speak to you soon. Cheers.